Shakespeare famously coined the phrase, "What's in a name?" in Shakespeare. Well, we're going to see the biblical version of that in today's video. Hey guys, and welcome back to God's Word Made Simple by Simple Servant Ministries. My name is Aaron Hawk, and if this is your first time visiting with us, I just want to say welcome and thank you for joining us today. God's Word Made Simple is an online discipleship ministry dedicated to taking God's Word and making it simple. We want to help you understand God's Word, apply it to your life, and grow in your relationship with the Lord. And by the way, if you appreciate this content at some point, make sure you hit that subscribe button, turn that bell notification to all so you don't miss any future videos. We would really love to have you as part of our family. Okay guys, so today we are finishing chapter 3 of the book of Exodus. We are picking back up where God is sending Moses to Pharaoh and by extension the people of Israel to deliver them from slavery and bondage. So if you didn't catch last week's video, please go ahead and catch that. And really I'd recommend that you just take the time and go back a couple of videos and I'm going to point to the Exodus series as a whole there so that you could just get caught up in general. But we are jumping back in verse 13 today, and the idea of today is establishing who is God and who is Moses. What is in a name? So that'll make more sense here in a few moments. So right after the section where God comforted Moses, now Moses is starting to get a little more comfortable. He's like, okay, God, this is what you want. Okay. Verse 13, Then Moses said to God, Behold, I am going to the sons of Israel, and I will say to them, The God of your fathers has sent me to you. Now they may say to me, What is his name? What shall I say to them? In other words, he's partly putting up more excuses. Hey, God, I mean, come on, you got the wrong guy here, right? Moses is famous for that, but I think sometimes people make too much of that. He's also submitting. He's like, okay, let me get this straight. You want me to go and tell the people of Israel that I'm delivering them from Pharaoh, that the God of their fathers has sent them? Okay, at least do me a favor. What's your name so that I can tell him who sent them, right? Why would he ask that? So before we move on, hey, do me a favor. After I say this, hit pause. I'll tell you when. Tell me in the comments, before you watch the rest of the video, before you watch my answer, why do you think that Moses would ask for a name for God? I sort of answered my thoughts, but I'm going to answer it more in a moment. So in a moment, hit pause and tell me, why do you think, in the comments, why do you think that Moses wanted a name? Okay, hit pause. You didn't hit pause, did you? Well, hopefully you did. Hopefully you let me know your thoughts in the comments. If not, that's okay. We're going to move on. So here's the thing, and this is my thoughts. The Bible doesn't explicitly say why, so any thought is potentially valid. I think the number one thing is he just genuinely wants to be able to carry the authority of God with him. Well, how are they going to know I'm really from you, I think is part of it. But I think also is because, remember, Moses grew up as who? As an Egyptian. All of the Egyptian gods have names that classify them, that tell you what their area is. There's a god of the sun, the moon, the stars, the Nile River, etc. There's all these different gods that have names, and those names identify what area they are over. In other words, their area of dominion, what their power is, right? So the names of these gods instantly tell you where they rule, again, I'm kind of repeating myself. It's hard. I'm trying not to go too in depth here. The name defines their level of authority. Let's just word it that way. Okay. So I think that's the biggest reason that Moses is asking for a name, because who's going to listen to little old Moses? I think that's where he's coming from. So verse 14, God answers Moses, and this is an answer that resonates throughout all of the scriptures. God said to Moses, I am who I am. And he said, Thus you shall say to the sons of Israel, I am has sent me to you. I am that I am. That is a non-answer. It is an answer. And by the way, that's where the idea of Yahweh comes from. It's actually 4 consonants in a row, YHWH. historically, scribes wouldn't even pronounce the name. They'd leave off all the vowels that were potentially there. Some people claim that the vowels never existed. Sorry, I just banged the mic. Some people claim that the vowels never even existed, that it was always the consonants YHWH. But whatever the case, that name was considered so holy that people literally wouldn't even say it. And then later, people are like, well, you know, I don't think it's such a big deal to say the name. God did share it. So then they came up with Yahweh. So if you didn't know, that verse is where that comes from. But the truth is, it's not a name. It's a phrase that simply means, I am. So if it's not a name, what is it? Well, it's a phrase that simply means, I am. I am is undefinable. You can't limit me to a name because God, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, God is a God of gods. He is the only one and true God. He can't be limited by time and space. He can't be limited by matter. He can't be limited by a concept in our mind, and he certainly can't be limited by a name. Because especially in their context, but any context, as soon as you give something a name, it defines them, right? Why do a lot of teenagers choose to use an alternate name? Because they want to disassociate themselves from the name that they used growing up. And they want to take on a new identity as a grown-up. Even my son, who's named Joshua, right, when he was younger, everybody called him Josh or Joshi. He's recently said, let's not use that name anymore. My name's Joshua, right? He is growing up, much to his mother's dismay. He is no longer wanting to be identified as a baby. He's wanting to be identified as a growing up. He wants to be an adult, of course, because all kids do. Wow, were we foolish, right? A name defines us. It makes it so that we can be put in a box and defined and analyzed. And if you can analyze something, then that means that at a conceptual level, you believe yourself to be superior to it in some way. God can't be defined, and he is the superior. So were God to even have a name, which he can't because that would limit him philosophically. We're in a philosophical debate or a comment at this point. But also, were he to give us a name, even if it was possible for him to have a name, if he was to give us a name, we would automatically limit him and start defining him by that name. So I am is the answer. It's, look, I don't have a name. You can't define me. You can't limit me. You can't put that restriction on me because I am. Wow, that's powerful. I could do an entire video just on that, and I've taken up a good bit of this video doing so. But let's move on. God said to Moses, I am who I am, and he said, thus you shall say to the sons of Israel, I am has sent me to you. In other words, don't try to define me. Don't put me on an even playing field with the gods of the Egyptians. You can't give me a name and claim that's my dominion, because my dominion is everything, and my power is limitless, and my place of influence is everywhere. Verse 15, God furthermore said to Moses, thus you shall say to the sons of Israel, the Lord, the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob has sent me to you. That would resonate with the Hebrew nation. Because even though vaguely they knew part, at least, of their own history, and they would know those three names. This is my name forever, and this is my memorial name to all generations. So God is saying, look, you want to call me by something? I am. Period. End of story. You want to refer to me? Call me the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, because that ties together all the covenants and miracles and everything else that has been done and will be done. All right, let's move on. I could do an entire video, probably even a series in that section. It is powerful. But these videos are designed for newer believers, those that have never been discipled, or skeptics. So we're going to move on. Verse 16, go and gather the elders of Israel together and say to them, the Lord, the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, has appeared to me, saying, I am indeed concerned about you and what has been done to you in Egypt. Again, this goes back to verse 24, 25 of chapter 2. So I said, I will bring you up out of the affliction of Egypt to the land of the Canaanite and the Hittite and the Amorite and the Perizzite and the Hittite and the Jebusite, to a land flowing with milk and honey. And remember, he had already promised that land to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and he had reaffirmed, Jacob, remember, is Israel. That was, his name was changed to Israel. So it was reaffirmed in different ways, in different covenants to each of the three of them. They will pay heed to you, they will pay heed to what you say, and you with the elders of Israel will come to the king of Egypt, and you will say to him, the Lord, the God of the Hebrews, so now the wording is directed to Pharaoh, he would simply know them as the Hebrews, the Lord, the God of the Hebrews, has met with us. So now, please let us go a 3 days journey into the wilderness so that we may sacrifice to the Lord our God. So this is the request. Now, he's not saying we're gone forever, but any king, Pharaoh, would know that that's what this means. It is making a request that ought to be favorable, that ought to be a, sure, go ahead, but he knows, and we see this in verse 19, he knows this is going to trip them up because Pharaoh's never going to let this happen. The people of Israel are being delivered whether Pharaoh likes it or not, but Pharaoh's not going to know that, and in verse 19 we see God anticipating this, because he's God. He is. Oh, that's such a powerful phrase. I wish I had time to get into that. Anyway, verse 19. But I know that the king of Egypt will not permit you to go except under compulsion. In other words, ain't going to happen until I force his hand, until I make him let you go. He's never going to do it until I force him to. Verse 20. So I will, who? God. So I will stretch out my hand and strike Egypt with all my miracles, which I shall do in the midst of it. And after that, he will let you go. So he's letting Moses know, and by extension, the elders of Israel know. Look, this isn't going to be a one shot and done. This isn't going to be that you walk into the courts of the Pharaoh, say, hey, we're leaving, cool, peace, see ya. It's not going to be that simple. This is going to be a long, costly process. Now, it wasn't really that long, but it's not instant, okay? God's telling them ahead of time, and the Bible tells us elsewhere later in this story, as well as, I believe, the book of Hebrews and elsewhere in the New Testament, it tells us part of the reasons why. Part of it is that God wanted to demonstrate his power to the world and to the nation of Israel. There are lots of reasons, but that's kind of the overarching theme. So, yeah, he could have just made Pharaoh do it right away, but that wasn't the plan for numerous reasons. Okay, verse 21. I will grant this people favor in the sight of the Egyptians, and it shall be that when you go, you will not go empty-handed. So what we have here is basically a battle, a war that is going to be fought. Yet the nation of Israel, the Hebrews, are not going to lift a finger in actual battle. What happened, especially during this time, this is considered not okay in most warfare today. I believe the Geneva Convention, but at least most warfare today, you're not allowed to loot. When you go to a foreign country and you conquer that land, you're not allowed to take all of the assets, money, property, etc., right? The last war where that was pretty okay, I believe, was World War II. It was very common and there wasn't anything ethically wrong with it at the time. Now people consider that wrong. You could debate the ethics of it all day long, but it's been the norm for thousands of years that when you conquered a land, you got their assets. That was, in fact, one of the main reasons for going to war for many, many centuries. So what he's saying here is God's going to do the delivering in verse 20, but verse 21, you guys are going to get to loot the Egyptians even though you didn't actually fight the battle. Verse 22, but every woman shall ask of her neighbor and the woman who lives in her house articles of silver, articles of gold, and clothing, and will put them on their sons and daughters. Thus you will plunder the Egyptians. So God is saying there is going to be an epic battle. I am taking down the world superpower. And God, as God, I will get the credit for that, not the nation of Israel, because I want the entire world to know that there is one God and only one God of gods who is capable of taking down a superpower and allowing the weak slaves to walk out with the riches of Egypt. That's the promise that God is making, and that is the promise that God eventually delivered. It is an amazing story, and I hope that you are subscribed so that you can come back and that you've got that bell notification turned to all. So if you haven't already, hit like, hit subscribe, turn that bell notification to all, because it is unlikely that our videos will be delivered to you if you're not subscribed and have that subscription bell set to all. It has become common knowledge, it has come out in roughly May of 22, that yes, shadow banning is a real thing on social media, not that anybody really had any doubt. So help the channel grow by doing that so that you can actually see what's going on. All right, that is it for today, guys. Thank you very much, and God bless.